Hi everyone, Bruce here at eTrailer. Today we're going to take a look at and install the Roadmaster Comfort Ride Suspension Kit on our 2022 Grand Design Solitude. This suspension upgrade system provides a smooth, comfortable towing experience whether you've got a camper, car hauler, snowmobile trailer, or even a utility trailer. This kit will help reduce bouncing, chucking, and porpoising, plus it will also increase your traction while braking. So if you do own a trailer that does have 3-inch axles, this kit may be right for you. Now, as far as the installation goes, it's pretty cumbersome. There's a lot of pieces to go together. It's not too difficult, but the hardest part is actually getting your trailer up off the ground to be able to work underneath it, because you do have to remove the tires. So if you're not willing to do that at home, check out our dealer locator on etrailer.com. But if you do want to go ahead and give it a try, I'll show you how. First thing we need to do is go ahead and jack your trailer up, and you do need to remove the wheels and tires as we did here. But you also need to support the axle on both sides. You notice we've got jacks supporting the axle on this side, and the other side we're not working on. And to go ahead and really begin, we're going to remove all these pieces. So we're going to remove this, your leaf spring from its bracket and everything. All these pieces will come off, so let's go ahead and get started doing that. First bolt we're going to go ahead and remove is towards the rear. This is the leaf spring hanger here. These are knurled, as you see here on this bolt. So these are actually hammered in, and this piece won't actually spin. But you still need to put a 13/16 on here to hold it, just in case it does spin, and remove the nut on the back side, which is a 3/4. This is the nut I was talking about we got to get to. So if you do have these braces on your unit, you're going to have to go ahead and loosen a couple of these bolts up. You don't need to loosen all of them, just a couple of them to get our socket in, so we can go ahead and remove that nut. It is a 3/4, so let's go ahead and do that. And a 13/16 on the other side. This washer, if you do have this plate, we are going to reuse this washer, so save it if you have this cross piece going across. And then we're going to take a bolt. Since I said, remember, these are knurled and they're pressed in, so we're going to take a extra bolt that I got laying around, and we're going to go ahead and give that a whack. Just like that, and then we'll go ahead and pull that bolt out the rest of the way. This is the bolt that came out. This is the bolt in the kit that they give you. Now, if you notice, the wet bolt here in my right hand is, the silver one here, is longer. And the reason for that is because this extra added piece here, you do have this bracket, is you're going to need longer bolts, and we do carry those here at eTrailer. And we're going to take a 11/16 socket and the 13/16 inch again, and you're going to zip this off. I've already got them loose. And then we'll pull this piece off, pull the back piece out. It's just going to slide straight out, and you can go ahead and toss those aside. You won't be reusing those. Remove the U-bolts. It takes a 3/4 inch on this particular trailer. Pull down on the U-bolt like that. I do want to mention something about this. In the instructions, they do mention set these aside because you're going to reuse them. But I will tell you from experience, more times than not, they're going to be too short, because we've got another bracket that's going on top of the new leaf springs, and then this bracket goes on top of that. So you're really not going to have enough length on the factory U-bolts. So we do have these here, and this is what we'll be using today. We can go ahead and get the last U-bolt out of there. like that. And this top plate, they say to reuse that as well, but in our U-bolt kit, we've got a new plate, so we'll use the new plate in the U-bolt kit. And then take your leaf spring, just lift it off, pull it out, and go ahead and you can get rid of that because we won't be reusing these. We do have new ones in the kit. Now we're working on the rear axle here. So whatever we do to the rear axle, you're gonna be doing, it's the same process for the front axle. Grabbing our 3/4 inch and our 13/16 again, and we're gonna go ahead and remove this bolt just like we did the rear leaf spring hanger. We do need to remove this nut. And this bracket here is one of the brackets for that bracing that our neighbor had put on. This one's going to get removed and not put back on because there is a spring box that we've got to put up under here, and you'll see that in a little while. Take our hammer and knock this bolt out. Like that, and now we can remove this piece and go ahead and toss that because we won't be reusing it. Once you've got all the pieces removed like we do here, we need to go ahead and put the slipper spring box in, and it's going to go right here. But the first thing we've got to do, we do have some bolts here that we got to remove, and then we're going to cut out some of this plastic underbelly here because this needs to sit flush up against the frame. So let's go ahead and remove those bolts real quick. And we won't be reusing these bolts either because that piece is actually going to get cut out anyway. Grab your slipper spring box and make sure the sticker is pointing to the outside of the camper as we have it here. And what we're going to do is just mock this up because we've got to cut this plastic out, but I don't want to cut too much, so I'm just going to set this up here, whoops, for now, and I'm just going to mark the outside so I know where to cut. And this side, we'll get it close, and we'll go from there. You see my lines here? That's where the box, how wide the box is. And I'm just gonna go all the way to where the frame ends here. So first, I'm just gonna take a utility knife, just cut straight down, and then I'm gonna find where the frame actually ends. So all I'm doing here is just poking up so I can feel the end of the frame, and once the knife goes in, that's right there. See how far the knife went in? Now I'll just go the other direction and cut along the frame there to get this piece cut out. Remove this sealant here as well because it is in our way of our spring box. So go ahead and cut that out with your utility knife and remove all of it. We're going to take our spring box and temporarily put it on our bracket here. We're going to take the 9/16 bolt with a washer. Again, I'm not even going to put a nut on here. This is just to hold it so we can get it in the right position and mark it so we can drill. Now we need to just go ahead and make sure the box is straight on here and centered on the frame. And then we're going to take a clamp and go ahead and clamp it down. Oops. Put one on that side. And then we'll do one on the other side. Now, you can just leave the clamps on and go ahead and drill it if you've got a long enough drill bit, which is going to take about a 12-inch drill bit to do that. Or you can do what I'm doing here and go ahead and clamp it down, mark your holes, and then drop your
spring box back down, drill them, and then put it back up. But I'm gonna try and do it in one step, but I will still mark the holes just in case the spring box moves. While I'm doing anything, I've got my holes marked in the position it needs to be in. Take a paint marker or something and go ahead and mark your holes. There are 4 holes. Again, I'm doing this in case the spring box comes loose or moves on me. I still have my holes marked. And you do it on the other side as well. There are 2 holes. You'll mark those. We're going to drill a 21/64" hole in the frame here, but we are starting off with a smaller bit, and then we'll step up to the one that we need for our self-tapping screws. So now we're going to switch to our 21/64 and go ahead and drill that hole the rest of the way out. Take one of our self-tapping screws and we're going to go ahead and run it in that hole. And not only will it help us hold that for now, we can go ahead and drill the other ones without it slipping. We're just going to repeat that process on the other 3 holes. And now that we have this one set in there, just make sure your box is still in the same position it was. If it's not, go ahead and put it where it needs to be, and you can go ahead and drill one of the holes on the other side, run that self-tapper in, and that will hold your box. Once you have all the bolts tapped out and you do have the bolts in there, we do have to remove them to go ahead and put red Loctite on them and then torque them down. So what I'm going to do is just remove one bolt at a time, Loctite it, put it back in. That way I don't lose the position on my box. Get some red Loctite and put it on the threads. And then we'll run that one back in, torque it down, and do the other 3 the same way. Grab your torque wrench. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can rent one from your local auto parts store, or we carry them here at eTrailer. And we're going to go ahead and torque this down to the manufacturer specifications.
We can go ahead and remove this bolt because we do have to put a spacer in here. So go ahead and pull that bolt out, and we'll put the spacer up inside here. We're just going to line it up with the hole here and put our big bolt back through. Take the other washer and nylock nut, and we're going to put it on the back side here. Now we're just going to loosely tighten this for now. We will come back and torque everything down after we've got all the components on. Grab one of the new leaf springs, and we're going to go ahead and install that. And we are working on the rear axle. Again, you're just going to do the same thing for the front axle. So we're going to take our leaf spring, and if you notice up under here, we've got a little hole. That little hole's got to line up with our little nut here. Go ahead and set this in here. We've got to get it up into the spring hanger, and it should just go ahead and drop in. If it doesn't, you can raise or lower your axle with your jack to get it lined up properly. So this bolt here is the one that came in our kit. If you do have this type of bracing on your camper, you are going to need the longer bolts. So let's go ahead and take our longer bolt. And with our eye and our leaf spring here, we're just going to go ahead and push this in. Push that in, and these do have the knurls on them, so we do need to hammer that in. The washer that we took off, because we do have this stiffening bracket on here, we do need to go ahead and put that back on, and then we can put our lock nut on. Again, just hand tight for now, and we'll come back by and torque them down. a little hole in our wear plate here that our leaf spring goes down into. It's not a tight fit, so if you notice here, my axle can move back and forth from front to back. What I want to do is take that axle and move it towards the back like that, and that's going to align your axle. And we're going to grab one of our shock mounting plates with the little tab with the holes drilled in it here. Now, the way this goes on, we're going to put this on over the top of the leaf spring, but this part here needs to point towards the spring box. So just keep that in mind. The same with the front axle, it will point to the spring box. It would be pointed the other direction. So just make sure this tab here off of this plate is facing the spring box, no matter which side you're working on. Let's set that on top. We're going to grab a U-bolt, run that up from the bottom. Just be mindful of your brake wiring here, that you don't pinch it or anything like that, or get the U-bolt around the wrong side of it. I'm going to hold that there. And we'll grab our plate that came with our U-bolts, and that will go on top. Grab 2 nuts and 2 lock washers or split washers, and we'll go ahead and get those started. We grab our other U-bolt and go ahead and put it on the other side, and grab 2 more nuts and 2 more lock washers. Take a 3/4 inch socket, and we're going to go ahead and tighten these up. The way I like to do this, I like to get basically one side with the bolt head just even with the nut, and then I'll do the other side, because you do want to tighten these evenly. So how that one's even with the top of the nut, now I'll do the other side the same way. We just keep going around these until we get them snug, and then we can actually torque them down. Again, you just want to make sure they're all even. You don't want one side pulling harder than the other on the U-bolt. Now take your torque wrench and torque these down to the manufacturer specifications. Grab one of the longer spacers and one of the silver bolts. This is our safety bolt. In case something happens to the spring, it won't drop down out of the box. Slide it up in there and go ahead and put our bolt across. And put our nut on. And again, we're just going to finger tighten it for now. Now we need to take this bracket, and it needs to set inside the box just like this over the top of the leaf spring, because the actual leaf spring will glide across it. So go ahead and slide this in, line up our hole, and now if the hole doesn't line up, like we're close, you can always raise or lower the axle to go ahead and line that hole up with your jack. Just, you know, raise it up, or if you got a floor jack, you can stick it under there and raise it up and lower it down just to line up that hole. We're going to take one of the bigger gold bolts here and go ahead and slide that through. We'll put the nut on the back side. Again, hand tight for now. We'll come back by and torque them down. Now that does complete our install on the rear axle, other than we do have to torque all these down, but that's the last step I like to do, is torque everything down when I've got everything hooked up. And just remember, like I said, we're moving on to the front axle. Everything we did here is going to be the exact same on the front axle. Once you do have the front axle and all its brackets and everything put on, we can go ahead and go back by and torque everything down to the manufacturer specifications. Grab your torque wrench and start to torquing. Now the axle tie bracket that we put on top of the leaf spring here, you need to take an extension plate
And we're going to go ahead and mount it up. You're going to grab the 1.5-inch bolts here and the nylon lock nuts. We'll run them through this way, going from the inside of the trailer towards the outside. Now, if you do notice on this plate, this hole and this hole are further apart, so you want the holes that are closer together mounting to our plate. Take our nuts and go ahead and tighten them, and we'll come back and torque them down. Again, just keep in mind you're going to do this to the front axle as well. We have lowered our camper down. Obviously, you see the tires on the ground, and that's what you need to do before you start mounting the shocks. Now that we did that, we can go ahead and mount the shocks. So we've got a bolt, washer, and then a black spacer, and then we're going to need to use a wedge washer on the outside here. So we'll go ahead and put that on, and the mounting hole is up here. Go ahead and push that through, and then we're going to grab another wedge washer, which is going to go inside here, and then a nylon nut. Now on the bottom side, we're just going to hand tighten that for now. On the bottom side, we're going to have another bolt, a washer, and we're going to come in from the outside and go in with it. And then we're going to have a spacer, black spacer, and then we'll have another washer, and then we can slide it onto our shock. Now, you got to get it partially started because we've got to push the shock up and insert it into the bolt, onto the bolt. So we're just going to give that a little shove. Just like that. You just got to work it a little bit because the shock's trying to push down while you're trying to do this. So basically, if you notice, the strap on the shock now is loose. And then we're going to follow this with another washer. We'll tighten these down, and we're going to come back by and torque them to manufacturer specifications. Mounting our shocks to our slipper spring box here. You notice the wedge washer here, the thick part's going to be pointing down and in line with our shock body. And on the inside of that, you'll have the thinner part pointing in that direction. So basically those wedge washers will be opposite of each other, but they must be in line with our shock body. And then we can go ahead and torque them down. The easiest way to get those aligned properly is go ahead and snug the bolt up, and then you're able to go ahead and move those. Just make sure they don't move when you torque them down. Let's go ahead and grab our torque wrench and get the top one torqued down to the manufacturer's specifications. Just make sure that those wedge washers don't turn on you. If they do, you'll have to loosen it up and do it over again.
Once you torque down all 4 of your shocks, don't forget to also torque down your wheels because we did have those off. At that point, this does complete our installation of our Roadmaster Comfort Ride Suspension Kit on our 2022 Grand Design Solitude. I'm Bruce. Thanks for watching.